Her bridesmaid showed me a video. It was my fiancé, saying, "I'll marry him for the health insurance." The crowd laughed. I laughed louder when I played it at the rehearsal dinner. The room went silent as her voice crackled through the speakers. "I'll marry him for the health insurance," she laughed. And the laughter that followed? That wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I hadn't even hit play. Someone else did. Someone who knew the truth long before I did. My name's Jake. I'm 29 years old, and until last week, I thought I was going to marry the woman who stayed by my side through chemo, through hair loss, through the kind of nights that make a hospital bed feel like a prison. I thought she was my anchor. Her name's Holly. She's 27. She's loud, warm, always the brightest person in any room. The type of person who never asks for permission to dance, even when there's no music. We met during one of the ugliest times of my life, but she made it feel like there was still something beautiful left in it. She met me when I was in a hoodie, slumped in a cancer support group with no hair and no hope. She brought me coffee that first day. She wasn't even part of the group. She was there visiting her cousin, but she stopped and talked to me, asked my name, asked what books I read, laughed when I said sci-fi, then told me I looked like someone who tried to overanalyze alien cultures. We went on our first date the next week. 6 months later, I got the all-clear, remission. I proposed 4 months after that. Everything was good, almost too good. But when you've crawled back from the edge, you stop waiting for the floor to drop. You just try to enjoy the view. That was my mistake. The wedding was supposed to be small. Family, friends, a venue up in the hills, near where her parents used to take her camping. We were 6 days away. Everything was in motion. The caterers, the DJ, the overpriced flower arrangements I still don't understand the purpose of. My only real job left was to show up. And then her bridesmaid called me. Her name's Angela. We weren't exactly close, but she always seemed a little different from the rest of Holly's friends. Quieter, like she wasn't trying to outsparkle everyone else in the room. She called me on a Tuesday morning, said she needed to talk, said she didn't know how to say it, but couldn't keep it to herself anymore. At first I thought someone had died, or gotten pregnant, or maybe that Holly was having some sort of breakdown, wedding stress, maybe. But Angela's voice was steady. She told me she had a video, said she recorded it at Holly's bachelorette party in Vegas, that she hadn't planned to, but, well, she didn't feel good about what she'd heard. She wouldn't send it over text, wouldn't email it. She wanted to meet in person, and I agreed. I met her at a park, neutral, public, quiet. She pulled out her phone, didn't say anything, and just hit play. The screen showed a hotel suite, high-end, gold curtains, glowing chandelier. Holly was standing in the middle, holding a glass of champagne, barefoot and tipsy. Around her, 5 or 6 other women cheered as she raised her glass. And then she said it. To me, for finally scoring a stable man. And not just stable, employed. With full benefits. I mean, come on. I'll marry him for the health insurance, if nothing else. The women around her roared with laughter. I'm kidding, she added, through giggles. Sort of. One of her friends, off-screen, shouted, to free love and free dental. They all clinked glasses. The video ended. Angela didn't say anything. Just looked at me with an expression I couldn't place, something between pity and guilt. I couldn't even speak. My mouth felt dry. My fingers were ice. She finally broke the silence. I thought it was just a joke, until she started talking like that when the cameras weren't rolling. She said you'd be her safety net. That you're sweet. That you'd never leave, even if she cheated. That last line hit like a slap. I thanked Angela. I don't even remember what else I said. I just nodded, got into my car, and sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. I could have confronted Holly that night, but I didn't. I went home, sat in the living room, played the video again, and again, and again. Then I transferred it to my hard drive and started planning a new kind of rehearsal dinner. That night, Holly came home from her bridal gown fitting, full of stories about how her mom cried when she saw her in the dress. She danced barefoot across the kitchen while I stirred pasta, humming something off-key and grinning like a teenager. It made my stomach twist, not with nerves, with something colder, like I'd swallowed a stone. She kissed my cheek, told me we were almost there, that she couldn't wait to call me her husband. I watched her disappear down the hallway. For the first time in our relationship, I felt like a stranger in my own home. I didn't sleep. I lay there next to her, listening to the rise and fall of her breathing, trying to convince myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe she really had just made a bad joke. Maybe it was the champagne talking. Maybe I was spiraling. But that voice in the back of my mind wouldn't shut up. Would she say the same thing if the roles were reversed? Would I ever joke about marrying someone for a medical plan? The next morning, I checked our shared tablet. It was synced with her Google account. I wasn't proud of what I did, but at that point, pride felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. I searched through her history. I didn't have to dig deep. How soon does health insurance activate after marriage? Can I quit my job after getting married and keep spouse coverage? Penalty for canceling wedding last minute? That last one hit me hardest. The date on it was from 3 months ago, before the invitations had even gone out. I didn't confront her. I didn't slam the tablet down or wake her up or demand answers. I just took a screenshot. Then another. Then another. I backed them up onto a flash drive and labeled the folder. Proof. The next 2 days were strange. Holly buzzed with wedding excitement, and I stayed quiet, floating just beneath the surface of normal. I still kissed her goodnight, still helped her write the seating chart. But every time she smiled at me, I felt like I was staring into the mask of someone I didn't know. Her friends were circling too, like vultures dressed in designer dresses. One of them, Brandy, I think, made a joke about us being so opposite, and how Holly was the dreamer and I was the one with the steady income. They all laughed. Holly didn't correct her. She just sipped her wine and winked at me. I realized then that they didn't know me. Not really. I was the concept of stability. I was the guy they could lean on when the rent was due. The one who filled up the fridge when they all came over after bar hopping. The responsible one. The boring one. I didn't feel angry yet. Not fully. I felt detached, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. It wasn't until the rehearsal dinner that things finally shifted. The venue was beautiful. String lights wrapped around the trees. A long wooden table dressed with candles and roses. Her parents made a toast about 2 becoming 1. My brother clapped me on the back and said he was proud of me. Holly's eyes sparkled the entire evening. She touched my hand under the table, whispered that she'd never been happier. Then came this slideshow moment. We'd joked about doing something cheesy, like a photo montage of our relationship. First date, hospital visits, vacation photos. Holly said she wanted people to cry, so I made one. But I added my own scene at the end. I stood up near the end of the dinner, tapped my glass, and thanked everyone for being there. I said something about how love is tested not in the easy times, but in the moments when it's hardest to stay. How I had learned that firsthand. People nodded. Holly squeezed my arm. Then I said I wanted to share something. Something meaningful. I queued up the video. The first minute was normal. Cute photos of us, smiling and laughing, over a soft instrumental track. People awed. Someone even wiped a tear. Then the screen flickered. And there she was. Champagne glass in hand. Hair down. Eyes wide. Voice loud. I'll marry him for the health insurance. The laughter on the screen erupted. Then silence in the room. Someone gasped. A fork clinked against a plate. One of her cousins muttered, "Wait, what?" I didn't say anything. I didn't pause it. I let it run. To free love and free dental. Then I ended it. I turned to Holly. Her face was frozen. Not in confusion. In horror. I leaned forward, careful not to raise my voice, and said just one thing. So, what's the copay on betrayal? She didn't answer. Her mom stood up. Her dad looked like he wanted to melt into the chair. My brother just whispered, "Holy SH," under his breath. I set down the clicker, picked up my glass, and toasted the silence. To clarity. That's when the night really started unraveling. Holly's chair scraped against the floor as she stood up. Her face had turned white, like all the blood had drained out of her body in seconds. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't look away. I didn't blink. I wanted her to speak. I wanted her to lie to me again, this time in front of everyone. Let them hear it the way I'd heard that video. But she didn't lie. She panicked. Okay, that was out of context, she stammered. It was a bachelorette party. You all know how those are. You drink, you say stupid stuff. I didn't mean it. She looked around the room for support, scanning for friendly faces. One of her friends looked down at her plate. Another raised her eyebrows, not committing to either side. The bridesmaid who had shown me the video? She didn't even move. Just sat there, staring into her wine like she'd seen this ending coming from the first act. I didn't say anything. Just let her twist in her own words. Her mom, seated 2 chairs down, tried to offer a weak laugh. Holly, it was a joke, right? A bad one. But let's not blow things out of proportion. That's when my brother, who never gets involved in drama, ever, leaned in and said, loud enough for the entire table to hear, kind of a weird joke to Google insurance activation dates after, don't you think? Holly froze. She looked at me. I looked at her. And then I stood up. Calmly. Smoothly. No yelling. No theatrics. Just stood and placed a small stack of printed screenshots on the table in front of her plate. Maybe tell them what these are, I said, tilting my head. Your search history, since you brought up context. She didn't touch the papers. Just stared at them like they might catch fire. You looked up how soon insurance kicks in. You searched cancellation penalties before we even picked a caterer. You made the slideshow easy for me, Holly. You organized the evidence yourself. One of her uncles tried to intervene. Hey, maybe we can. No, I cut in. Calm. Collected. We can't. You all came here for a celebration. I came to bury the fiction. And then I looked at Holly, And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel confused or heartbroken. I felt certain. You could have told me you were scared. You could have told me you were unsure. Hell, you could have backed out with dignity. But you didn't. You laughed about me. About what I've been through. You made me a punchline to people who don't even know what a PICC line is. Her father stood up now. He didn't say anything, just put a hand on my shoulder. The way dads do when words won't cover what's sitting in the air. I nodded at him. He nodded back. The dinner ended without dessert. No one clapped. No one made toasts. People stood in silence, unsure whether they were leaving a party or a funeral. The only sound was the soft hum of the overhead lights and Holly's uneven breathing. She tried to follow me out, called my name, but I didn't stop. In the parking lot, she caught up. Jake, please don't walk away like this. That video doesn't define how I feel. I love you. I do. I turned to her. No anger. No pain. Just a slow, steady release of all the weight I'd been carrying. You love the version of me who didn't ask questions, who paid bills and didn't pry. That man's gone. And the one standing in front of you? He doesn't marry for pre-existing conditions. She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. I walked to my car, closed the door, and left her standing under the orange glow of the venue's parking lot lights, alone, in a dress she wouldn't be wearing to the altar. Back at my apartment, I opened a beer, sat on the couch, and stared out the window. It was quiet. And for the first time in weeks, that quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt like freedom. The next morning, I called the venue. The same woman who had taken our deposit answered, chipper and clueless. Hi, this is Jake Rowan, I said. I need to cancel the wedding. There was a pause, like she wasn't sure if I was joking. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Rowan. Would you like to cancel completely? No, I said. Keep the date. I'll still be using the space. That seemed to throw her off more. I'm sorry, what would you like to use it for instead? I leaned back in my chair, stared at the framed photo on the bookshelf, me and Holly in front of the hospital during my final chemo session. She was holding up a sign that said, "You did it." I should have seen it then. That smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I'd like to host a brunch, I said. Same guest list. Just a different purpose. There was a longer pause, followed by a quiet, professional, of course. After that, I started making calls. To my brother, my close friends, even my old college roommate, who was flying in. I didn't have to explain much. Word had already spread. When something implodes that spectacularly in public, the fallout travels fast. By noon, my phone buzzed. Holly, 11 missed calls. 3 voicemails. Then a text. Please talk to me. I can explain. I didn't reply. At 4:17 p.m., she showed up outside my apartment. She rang the buzzer 5 times before I even got up from the couch. When I opened the door, she looked like someone had vacuumed the soul out of her. Eyes red. Makeup smudged. No clever lines this time. No charm. Jake, she started. Please, just let me say something. I didn't say anything. I stepped aside, let her in. I wanted to hear it, all of it. Not because I was going to forgive her. That ship had burned. But because I wanted to see how deep she'd dig the hole. I messed up, she said, standing in the middle of my living room like it was foreign territory. I got caught up in everything. The party, the pressure, trying to be funny. Angela took that video totally out of context. I sat down and let her talk. She went on about how she was nervous about marriage, how she said things she didn't mean, how her friends egged her on. The speech was long, rehearsed, almost like she'd practiced it in front of a mirror. Then she leaned in, lowered her voice, and said the one thing she thought would break me. You know I was with you through everything. Through chemo, through the hospital stays. I stayed when no one else would. That means something, doesn't it? I let the silence stretch. Then I looked up and said, yes, it does. That's why it hurts so much. She didn't cry. I think she wanted to, but it never came. She stood there like a kid waiting to be told she wasn't grounded anymore. And then I said something I hadn't planned, but it felt right the moment it left my mouth. You know what the worst part is, Holly? You didn't just betray me. You used the one thing I fought hardest to survive as leverage. You saw what almost killed me and tried to make it your safety net. Her expression cracked. Not a sob, not a scream, just a twitch in her jaw that said she knew I was right. That this wasn't salvageable. I stood up, walked to the door, and held it open. She didn't argue, didn't try to hug me. She just walked out. I closed the door behind her, turned the lock, and stood there with my hand on the knob. 2 days later, I showed up to the venue in a gray button-down and slacks. No suit, no vows, no music, but there was still food, still champagne, still the same long tables. Guests arrived expecting drama. What they got was peace. I stood at the head of the table and raised a glass. Thank you all for being here, I said. I know this isn't what we planned, but sometimes plans fall apart so better ones can take shape. So, consider this a celebration of dodging bullets, of listening to your gut, and of not signing contracts just because the cake's already paid for. People laughed. Real laughter. The kind I hadn't heard in weeks. We ate. We drank. We toasted not to a bride and groom, but to clarity, honesty, and unexpected freedom. Holly didn't show up, but her bridesmaid did. The one who showed me the video. She sat across from me and said, "I can't believe you actually played it." I smiled. "Neither can I." Then I took a bite of cake. Vanilla. Light. Sweet. Almost like starting over. A week passed. Then two. The calls slowed, but they didn't stop. I never responded. Every time her name flashed on my phone, it was like a mosquito buzzing near a scar. Annoying, pointless, already too late. Then one morning, while making coffee and scrolling through my inbox, I saw an email from her. No subject line. Just one sentence. "Do you still have coverage? Just checking in." I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything. The silence hadn't made her reflect. It made her nervous. She didn't miss me. She missed what I came with. The benefits. The stability. The shield. I closed the tab. Didn't delete it. I wanted it there, not as a wound, but as a record. Later that afternoon, her dad called. That surprised me. We hadn't spoken since the rehearsal dinner. I half expected him to yell, or at least defend his daughter. But his voice was calm. Strained. "I want to apologize," he said. "I should have said something earlier. I think I knew something wasn't right with her for a while. But I told myself she'd grow into it. That maybe you'd be good for her." "She didn't need good," I replied. "She needed honest." He let that sit. Then he added, "I'm sorry you had to find out that way. But thank you for how you handled it. With more dignity than I think most people would have managed." It was the closest thing to closure I'd get from her side of the family. 2 nights later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. It was Angela, the bridesmaid. "Hey," she said. "I just wanted you to know. Holly's been telling people you ambushed her. That you edited the video. That you made her look bad on purpose." I chuckled. "Of course she is. But some of us remember exactly what she said," Angela continued. "And some of us know the difference between a joke and a confession." There was a pause. Then she asked if I was free for coffee sometime. I said yes. Not because I was interested. Not yet. But because there was something refreshing about someone who didn't lie to my face and then ask if they could still be on my insurance. The next morning, I checked Holly's social media. She hadn't posted since the night of the rehearsal dinner. Her feed had been scrubbed. No engagement photos. No countdowns. Just silence. Then I saw it. A fundraiser link in her bio. Emergency medical help needed. Anything helps. It wasn't even subtle. She'd lost her job. Apparently, the freelance work dried up after she told off a few clients. She didn't have health coverage anymore. And now she was asking strangers to pay for what she thought I owed her. At first, I laughed. Then I sat there, staring at the page, at the big red button that said donate now. And against every instinct in my body, I clicked it. I donated $100. Anonymously. No message. No note. Just enough for a prescription or a follow-up visit. Because I'm not heartless. But I'm also not her lifeline anymore. That same night, I opened the drawer by my bed and pulled out the little box I'd hidden there for months. The engagement ring. Platinum band. Vintage setting. My mother's. She'd worn it until her final day. I thought about what Holly said at her bachelorette party. About marrying me for the benefits. About not wanting to pay $600 a month for basic coverage. And I thought about how long it took me to survive the hospital stays, the treatments, the recovery. How someone can stand by you and still not stand with you. I walked to the bridge a few blocks from my place. The one over the water. Quiet. Empty at night. I opened the box, stared at the ring one last time. Then I closed it. Didn't throw it. Just turned around and walked back home. Because healing doesn't need an audience. And sometimes, the most powerful goodbye is the one you don't give. 6 months later, I was sitting on the patio of a quiet coffee shop in a different city, sipping something too complicated for my taste, and watching strangers walk their dogs. It was peaceful. That's all I wanted now. Not passion. Not chaos. Just peace. I transferred to a new office 3 hours south. Same job, better view, fewer memories. My coworkers didn't know about the wedding that never was, or the video, or the insurance joke that blew up my life. To them, I was just Jake. I liked that. It felt earned. Angela and I met once for coffee. Then again. Then again. It didn't turn into anything romantic. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But there was something steady about her. A person who didn't look away when things got ugly. A person who believed truth mattered, even when it came at a cost. One afternoon, we were walking through a bookstore downtown when she stopped and pulled out her phone. "You seen this?" she asked, turning the screen to me. It was a short clip. Someone had filmed the rehearsal dinner reveal. Not all of it. Just the toast, the line. "I'll marry him for the health insurance." And my response. So what's the copay on betrayal? The caption read, Groom plays bachelorette party confession at rehearsal dinner. This response, though, it had over 3 million views. I watched it in silence. The laughter from the screen felt distant now, like watching someone else's heartbreak, someone else's ending. Angela nudged me. You're famous now. I hope not, I said. But the truth was, I didn't feel exposed. I felt finished, like the last page had finally been turned. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, written in handwriting I recognized immediately. Inside was a card. Blank. Except for one line, written in small, uneven script. You were the only real thing in my life. I didn't deserve you. No name. No apology. No request. Just that. I placed it in the drawer with the ring box. Not out of nostalgia. Out of record keeping. Because sometimes the past deserves a shelf, not a pedestal. I didn't write back. A few weeks after that, I ran into someone unexpected, Holly's cousin, Rebecca. She worked in my new city, apparently. I bumped into her outside a bookstore. She recognized me instantly. You look different, she said. Better or worse? Less like someone trying to hold everything together. We got lunch. Talked. She eventually brought up Holly. Said she'd moved back in with her parents. Was trying to rebuild. That she was working retail, quietly. No new fiancé. No new boyfriend. Just quiet. She doesn't talk about you, Rebecca added. But her mom still brings you up. Says they lost someone good. I nodded. They didn't lose me. She gave me away. We paid the bill, said goodbye. I never saw Rebecca again. But that night, I took a walk. Same bridge. New city. New sky. I stopped halfway across and leaned against the rail. There were no grand reflections. No cinematic music. Just wind and water and the sound of distant traffic. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret not going through with the wedding. If I regret not giving her a second chance. And the honest answer is, I don't regret the breakup. I regret the delay. Because deep down, some part of me knew. Not from the beginning, but close. There were signs. Jokes that cut a little too deep. Avoided questions. The way she could change her tone like a chameleon, depending on who was watching. But I wanted the fantasy. The girl who stayed through the hospital visits. The one who smiled beside my chemo chair. The woman who danced barefoot in my kitchen. But that wasn't her. That was a performance. And the real her? She told the truth. In a suite, in Vegas, with a champagne glass in her hand and a camera rolling. I was just smart enough, eventually, to listen. Some stories don't need revenge. Don't need fire or fury. Just a quiet end. So this is mine. No last speech. No final confrontation. Just a closed box. A new chapter. And peace. Finally, peace. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day. And trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.